hell is a Kraken?
The Seattle Fish Heads.
Fish.
We can call them that.
They
if
have
if
the famous fish market.
Yeah, we can call them that. We can call them that if their front office makes bad decisions.
They already have. By the way, they didn't bring in Price. I mean, Carey Price, who's available, and they said they came out before this expansion draft and said we're not interested in Carey Price, the same guy that brought the Montreal Canadiens to the Stanley Cup Finals this year. Okay, so real
Montreal
smart.
Should be thanking God that
real smart. By the way, he lives in Vancouver over there. It would have been a perfect fit. He'd be very, very happy over there. Very stupid. I don't understand the Krakens. Right. Thank you, Rick. Well, I'm sure a lot of people are thanking Rick Tocchet and that management.
Ron Hextall.
Terrible.
Nobody said the Flyers front office was smart either.
Terrible. Anyways, why don't we go through the Kraken's expansion draft? Very interesting picks. I knew earlier this morning that Jordan Eberle was going to be gone. Something broke, and they were saying the Islanders protected Matt Martin, Cal Clutterbuck, and decided to part ways. And a lot of people say it was a bad mistake for the Islanders not protecting Eberle. I don't think it was a bad mistake. I think this was a planned mistake. Right. I think they purposely did this because they wanted Eberle off the salary cap so they can make another move and bring in a guy that could play beside Barzal that really fits Barzal's game. And I don't think Jordan Eberle, I don't care if he had 17 goals this year, and that's a lot for a guy that only played 43, 44 games this year. I mean, we were just talking about Ovechkin. He had 24 goals in 45 games. So he only had 6 more goals than Jordan Eberle. So he probably would have had a 30-goal scoring year if they played all 82 games. But nevertheless, Jordan Eberle just didn't fit Barzal. I don't think that offensive. First of all, that line was horrendous. Besides Barzal, that line was horrendous in the playoffs. It really was. Komarov, who scored 1 goal all year, and Eberle that scored 17. Was there anybody else on that line besides Barzal that can actually do something, that can make something out of nothing? The answer is no. Eberle lived off of every pass that Barzal gave him. But
he's done it his whole career. He was with the Oilers centers for the first part of his career and didn't do much with them either. So
I was reading this. The Islanders made a colossal mistake protecting Matt Martin, Cal Clutterbuck over a far better player in Eberle, and the Krakens paid for it, and the Krakens made them pay for it. No, they didn't. The Islanders, that was an absolute plan to get Eberle off the salary cap. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the only way that would be a bad mistake is if they don't get anybody. But the Islanders should get somebody with that money. Yeah.
First of all, they're going to sign back Anthony Beauvillier. They got to sign Pelech. Pelech's not going to. You're not going to have to pay because what's his name? He just got a contract. Didn't get paid a lot and.
Andy Green.
Yep, and not. They're not bringing Andy Green back, did they?
No, they already signed him. He got paid through. It's only $375,000 again.
Oh, so that's
very minimum.
That's nothing. Right. And I heard that Zach Parise is a lead guy that they want to bring in. I believe they're going to try to bring Palmieri back, and I wouldn't be surprised if Tarasenko is an Islander, either Tarasenko or. It makes sense, Tarasenko, because it's affordable, and you could put him with. He's a much better player than Eberle.
Way better.
You put him with Barzal. You solidify that first line when Anders Lee comes back. You're talking about one of the best lines in hockey. You know, you add a center of that gratitude. You have a great winger, and then you put you got Anders Lee, who's one of the more underrated big men and offensive players in the league.
Power type centers.
Yeah. So. I think you solidify your first line if you do that, and they didn't let Cal Clutterbuck back. I mean, they didn't move him because they got 1 more year left on his contract. They knew the Krakens weren't going to take Cal Clutterbuck.
Right.
Nobody wants Cal Clutterbuck with that contract. I think he's making $6 million or $5.5 million. Right. Nobody wants that contract. He has one.
They only signed him long term because of the name.
He has
like the name.
He has 1 more year left on his contract. He will be gone. Now, Casey Cizikas is a guy that the Islanders could think about bringing back because they had one of the better 4 lines in the league. I don't know if that means they're going to bring Casey Cizikas back. I think you could bring in Zajac. You actually can re-sign Zajac or Parise. You could bring Parise and he could center the 4th line. You could do something like that. Parise is a much better all-around player if he can stay healthy than Casey Cizikas.
That's the key.
You know, so and he's a center. I mean, you could you could put a Parisi as a center on your team. So he also is a winger. So you can do a lot of things with Zach Parisi. I'm very intrigued to see what this is the first year I can honestly say Lou Lamoriello has the money to make moves that can solidify his offseason. He's done it in the middle of the season at the trade deadline. He hasn't done it in the offseason. That really wowed you. Right. And we saw what he did for those championship teams with the Devils, the moves with Claude Lemieux and Jason Arnott. He made those moves in the middle of the season that solidified those teams. So
yeah, you bring up a good point too with Eberle over the fact of what the Kraken could want versus they're not going to take on Clutterbuck because they can get a lot of fourth line type players for much cheaper value. They could probably get 3 of them for the price.
If they protected Eberle, let's say they protected Eberle, and the Islanders put Clutterbuck in there. Do you really think they were going to take Clutterbuck?
There's no way they would have taken.
There's no way they would have
because they could get 3
Matt
of those.
Martin, maybe.
Yeah, maybe Matt Martin, but they could have gotten 3 of those guys for the same.
The guy I really thought that there were 2 guys I really thought they were going to look at. One was Josh Bailey. I think he was a guy that I think would have been intriguing for them. Another one, and it was crazy, there were reports that they were looking into it, but the other one was Anthony Beauvillier. But the thing is, if they did Beauvillier, then the Islanders were going to try to figure out a trade with them, and I don't think Seattle wanted to do that. So the Islanders are very fortunate that Eberle was the one that was picked, and it wasn't Beauvillier or Bailey.
Mm-hmm. Sam says the Kraken also took a different approach than Vegas did in their draft.
Did you like their expansion draft? I didn't like it.
They didn't take on any big contracts. That was what they wanted. They wanted to keep the salary cap space so they could sign guys in free agency and stuff.
I'm surprised how many older guys they took on too. I was very surprised that because Vegas was a lot younger when they took a lot of those guys.
Who was the best player they picked up?
Yanni Gourde, I would say, from the Tampa Bay Lightning. I like Giordano from the Flames as a player, but his contract is not looking great for them.
Well, it's the last year of his deal, though.
Yeah, he's probably the best overall player. Vince Dunn's another nice one, too, they got from the Blues.
I like Vince Dunn a lot. Mm-hmm. I like him really a lot. He's a very good defenseman.
Right. The question is with him, though, is can he be a number 1 type defenseman, which is what they're going to
He's more on the second or third pair.
Right.
But he is still a very good defenseman.
Because after that, they drafted a lot of defensemen, but not a lot of known defensemen. A lot of older guys, which are very weird.
That's a bad play for me.
Which is very weird for an expansion team. You think you want to take on younger guys, and that's what Vegas did. They got a lot of prospects, they got a lot of first-round picks, and they were able to make trades later on for Stone and Pacioretty and guys like that. And again, that also helped that a lot of the other guys overperformed. Now, also, to answer your question, Sam, a little further than that, I think there was a lot of teams being a lot safer with what they did in terms of protecting certain players, because there were a lot of teams that, like the Panthers giving Marchessault away, the Wild at the time when Holla was a great prospect, they didn't protect him and he went to Vegas. So there were a lot of teams that made those bigger mistakes in terms of giving Vegas that chance to be great as they were right away. We didn't see that this year. The only really top players were bigger contracts. And Yanni Gourde with the Lightning. The Lightning don't need him. They have a bunch of guys they could work with. And the Flames with Giordano.
No, Kraken's draft was kind of dumb. What are you talking about?
Yeah, we're saying that,
Sam. Sam, first of all, I look at the Kraken's draft. I was very surprised that's all the way they drafted the expansion draft.
Well, all their picks were spoiled throughout the whole day today.
Yeah, I didn't like their expansion draft. I mean, are they going to be like the Vegas Knights? They're not. They're not. Vegas Knights were very strategic on how they drafted. That's why they were so competitive, and they went to the Stanley Cup Finals their first year. This team isn't good.
Also, the really quick, the difference is the Golden Knights hired Gerard Gallant. The Seattle Kraken hired Rick Tocchet. And therein lies the difference and the problem with the Seattle Kraken.
Sam also says they went young at goalie, which was weird. Yes, and again, the goalies being very hard to find in the draft.
We could have gone Braden Holtby.
Right, I was thinking the same thing.
Oh, Sam said, I'm sorry, Sam. You said that. No, I didn't like their draft.
Yeah, I don't think
he was agreeing with you.
Right.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Sam.
And Sam, you bring up a good point. It's surprising with how hard goalies can be to find in terms of consistently year to year, both either with drafts or signing bigger contracts. Yeah, I'm surprised they wouldn't go after, at least take a flyer on Braden Holtby. He had a down year last year, okay, but that doesn't mean he can't transform himself.
He had a chance to bring in Price. How could you not bring in Carey Price?
Yeah, right.
Arrow remembers this. Arrow, when the Kraken hired Rick Tocchet as the head coach, it was Tocchet they hired, right?
Mm-hmm.
I called you that first day. What did I say to you? I said, I cannot believe they actually hired Rick Tocchet.
You said Gerard Gallant.
I said they should have hired Gallant, or they should have went. Basically, they could have done Tortorella. They could have won another good veteran coach who has dealt with this before.
I think Tortorella would have killed these young guys.
And they hired Rick freaking Tocchet.
Yeah, who's going to fail very quickly. And
he had uber amount of talent in Philadelphia. It was a disaster with them.
Well, nobody said
they hired this freaking schmuck. I mean, really. I mean, they already got it wrong the moment they hired the coach. They got it wrong.
I think this was a terrible.
I would have taken the Coyotes guy. Who was the Coyotes guy? The coach.
I don't.
The Rangers interviewed him.
I'm just looking.
What was it?
Tippett.
I'm just looking. Yeah. I'm just looking at this roster right now, and
it's not good.
It's horrible. How do they expect to compete? I mean, this isn't. Like I said, this isn't the Knights. This is horrible. And Jordan Eberle's probably crying that he's going there.
Jordan Eberle's gonna be on the top line.
He is. He's gonna be their top player.
Yeah, it'll be a top line of him.
I mean, I'm telling you, listen, Marchidano, he won
Gordon.
A Norris 3 years ago. Yes.
He won the Norris 3 years ago.
Yeah.
He's still a pretty good player.
He regressed a little.
He's 37 years old. He's going to be the top. He's literally going to be the top on the top defensive pair. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like, you're going to put a 37-year-old on the top defensive pair?
I mean, he's a good player, yeah.
Well,
but still, you would want to get more, at least a counter type of defenseman, more of a physical type to go with it, which they didn't get it at all. Vince Dunn's kind of that same kind of thing as him. He's better defensively, but he's still kind of that smaller type too. So even from a team identity perspective,
unless they really, really, really think they're going to get guys in free agency.
Oh, Quick was available. I didn't even know Quick was available too. They could have Quick.
But Quick is pretty much fizzing. His contract is not good. His contract is really bad. He's
Hall
had a bad last 2 or 3 years.
Price. I think Price
would have been the best.
Yeah, he lives right over there in Vancouver. You know, him and his wife would have absolutely loved to go to Seattle. I think he would have been a great guy to build your team around, a top-end goaltender that you could build your team around. And why wouldn't you draft? That makes no sense. That would have been my number one pick. Mm-hmm. Carey Price would have been my number one guy. And I read some of the stories like they didn't want him. What do you mean you didn't want him? The guy just led a team that had no business going to the Stanley Cup Finals all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. He was the best goalie in the playoffs. It was just ridiculous.
The other thing I think they did too much impulsively was they hired they drafted a lot of overperformers too, which you can't expect them to happen year to year. A lot of the defensemen, even some of the forwards that they ended up taking, were all overperformers. They weren't really young guys to actually build on.
Yeah.
When Vegas built mostly young guys and had their overperformers come later. Obviously, William Karlsson being as the one, 6 goals with the Blue Jackets, and all of a sudden he scores 43. I don't think anyone expected that coming. But even some of the guys they took to help their third and fourth lines later, Alex Tuck, and like I said, Halla earlier, those guys, they knew they had some upside. These guys don't really have the upside either that you see out of the Vegas draft picks that we saw right away. Obviously, Vegas got other players later again, but still, these are all a lot of in-between type, similar, same identity type players that doesn't make sense. And so many old guys, too, like Jamie Alexiak, Adam Larson, like who wants them?
It had me shaking and itching my head, like where are they going with this? But again, not all organizations are smart, and they're obviously not one of them.
That's what happens when you take the Flyers front office.
As for
to a new
an
team.
Islander fan should be very happy Jordan Eberle's contract is off the board. You're talking about going into the offseason, they were $8 million over the cap. Now all of a sudden they're $15.5 million under the cap. Now you can start really first of all, rebuilding this team. You sign Pelech, you sign Bolivier, and then you decide what you're going to do. Are you going to bring in a Vladimir Tarasenko? Do you do something like that? Do you maybe Lazankog, whatever his name is, from Landeskog from Colorado? That's something the Islanders, because you could bring in Zach Parise, who will take a small contract to come here. Maybe you re-sign Palmieri, which I believe the Islanders will. I think they'll give Palmieri the 5.5 that they just lost with Jordan Eberle. I think they'll do that. Cizikas is gone no matter what. I think the Rangers would be very stupid not to bring him in. I think he's the perfect fit for the New York Rangers.